Hello, teachers. I had a wonderful idea for you to start this lesson, and then I had the opportunity to actually substitute a class this morning, and I tried my idea, and it didn't go anything like I thought it was going to. So let me just apologize for any of these lesson gems that you try, and then you go, wow, that didn't go anything like Brother Hegemann made it sound like it was going to go, because that was my experience this morning. So I've revamped it a little bit, and hopefully this goes a little bit better. And by the way, it just made me appreciate you, because when I was teaching seminary and institute on the Wasatch Front, if a class didn't go like I thought it was going to first hour, then I had a chance to revamp it and teach it the second hour, and revamp it and teach it a third hour, and then fourth and fifth. And I just admire you that you get one shot at it every morning. And so if every lesson doesn't go just picture perfect, just know you're in good company with a lot of us. And I think the Lord accepts our 2 fish and our 5 loaves, and it's enough. He can multiply it in the hearts of our students. So with this chapter right here, Mormon chapter 3, I really like the teacher's manual and what they've given us to share about the final judgment. However, there are some verses before Mormon gets into talking about the final judgment that in my mind are just gems that I would touch on for a minute. So here's what I would do to start this lesson. I would put this slide up and ask the students this question: which sport would gain the greatest advantage from knowing their opponent's strategies in advance? So let them think about that for a minute and share with you some of their ideas. For me, I think football probably. You could have the biggest advantage knowing exactly what plays a team was going to run every time. But get some of their ideas on it, and maybe they'll have some good arguments for some of the other sports. And then have them go to Mormon chapter 3, verse 4, and have them look for what Mormon learned about his opponent's strategies. I think this is just a fascinating verse where the Lamanites, the king sends Mormon a letter saying, hey, we're going to come attack you. And so let them identify that in that verse, and you can laugh at them a little bit about, boy, why would you do that if you're coming to attack your enemy? Why would you let them know when you're coming? Just Mormon knew this because Mormon got the letter. But what if he wouldn't have shared this with his troops? What difference would have that made? And then talk about, well, how did Mormon respond? He obviously did let his troops know. And what did he do with this information? As they dissect those verses, it talks about how he put them right in the narrow neck of land, because he knew if he could stop them there before they got into the land, it would be much easier defeating them there in the narrow neck. And so he put his greatest strength right there, and sure enough, they did defeat them. You can then transition into our day and time. So what does President Nelson know about our opponent's strategy? Get their thoughts, and what if he didn't share that with us? What if he didn't warn us and prepare us? And thankfully, like the prophet Mormon, our prophet prepares us for sure. So have them ponder this question: what guidance did President Nelson give us to help prepare for the future, knowing how the adversary is going to attack, knowing what's coming, as seers are able to see and warn? What did he share with us from this last General Conference? So I've included this handout in the Google folder, the Google Drive. It's his talk from the Sunday session of General Conference. And all of the paragraphs are numbered. It'll print off front and back on one page. I would just hand that to my students and say, let's take a look at what our captain is doing to prepare us for the adversary, for our opponent who's coming against us. So invite them to look for anything that President Nelson invites us to do. What questions does he ask? He asks a lot of questions in this talk. It's interesting. What promises does he make us in this talk? And then pay attention to the 8 exclamation points in this talk. So let them just dive in, put on a little bit of music, and let them study this, or you could have them study this together in pairs. They don't necessarily have to read through the whole talk. They could start in different spots and scan it. And then just have a discussion about what is our prophet, what is our captain doing to prepare us for the adversary. And if you have time and you want to take it a little more personal, have them ponder for just a minute, where do you personally see the adversary attacking you? And they don't need to answer this out loud, but maybe just have them ponder that. And then this thought: how did this talk help you with what you're going through right now? What did the words of President Nelson do for you personally as you read these powerful invitations and promises and warnings? And you could have them record that in your journal. If some were brave and it wasn't too personal, they could share with the rest of the class. Then transition into the teacher's manual. This is right out of the teacher's manual. I really like it. Say, okay, so speaking of being prepared, are you prepared for the final examination right now? Pull out a piece of paper, number it 1 to 3. You can have some fun with this and just talk about this is worth 10,000 extra credit points. And here are the 3 questions, ready, go. And then give them each of these 3 questions. How many verses are there in the Book of Mormon? How many times is Christ mentioned by one of his names or titles in the Book of Mormon? And how many Lamanites were converted by the teaching of Nephi and Lehi in Helaman chapter 5? And by this point in time, they should have that panic look on their face because you've given them no time to prepare. By the way, in the notes of the PowerPoint and in the Google slide, you'll see the answer to all 3 of these so that you can look very smart in front of your youth. And you probably already knew the answer to these. And then you could put up these questions right here and chat with them. So how might your feelings about this test be different if your teacher told you about it beforehand? There's a couple of more questions in this next bullet point. Go through those and talk about it with the youth. Now, sometimes I give you too much in these lesson gems, and I do that intentionally because some of you teach for an hour instead of 50 minutes. Some of you teach a little bit over an hour, and you're only in a 4-day seminary per week. So if you don't have time to do all of these, it's okay, but I want to give some of those teachers who teach for an hour a little bit more in case they need it. Again, this is right out of the teacher's manual to make this chart, and then on the left to put some questions that come to their mind about final judgment, and then to read these verses from Mormon, and then to put what they learned about the final judgment on the right-hand side. I threw in question number 3. You might just point out to them that not all questions are created equally, and some we don't know, and some just really don't matter. And so invite them to try to come up with some inspired questions, jump into these great chapters and look for answers from Mormon. And if you have time, you could even have them jump into the Gospel Library and look for some other answers. Last of all, if you have time, and this could be a very powerful way to end the lesson, just invite them to ponder what the final judgment will be like while they read these really tender verses in Doctrine and Covenants section 45. There's some great questions here you can invite them to ponder as they read these verses, as the Savior talks about in what he'll do as our advocate at the judgment day. If you would like, I've put a link right here to a song by Matt and Savannah Shaw and Nathan Pacheco, and you could play this for them while they are reading these verses and perhaps writing in their journal. I put the link there. I didn't want to download it. I want us to go to their YouTube channel and give them that support rather than downloading it and uploading it into our PowerPoint. As always, I've got a link here in the description of the video below. You can click on that link and it will take you to this folder where I put a couple things. First of all, I put the PowerPoint in here, but I've also put a Google Slides version in it. I watched my wife open the PowerPoint that I included last week, and when it came up in her Google Slides, some of the things didn't fit. And so I went through and revamped those and put it in a Google Slides format. So if you're doing PowerPoint, as you know, when you go to open this, you're just going to click on it. It's going to open up initially in Google Slides. When you click on File and you click on Download, that's where you have the option to download it as a PowerPoint. You who are using PowerPoint, you already know that. Let me just show you real quick a couple other gems I put in that folder. One is a link to this document right here made by my dear friend Nathan Curitan. He's taken all the talks of President Nelson since he's been our prophet, and he's dissected them according to the blessings promised by President Nelson. You can see here the urgings, the pleadings, the invitations are all in blue, warnings in green, and then blessings pronounced in orange. So you can see each of his general conference talks, all of these different blessings and promises and invitations and warnings. So this is one document that's in there, but this is a little different version of it, and it's all of the blessings together from all of the talks, or all of the invitations or warnings, all of the promised blessings. So these aren't necessarily to use in class. They're just there for you if you would like. And I do have, as I said, the PDF right here of the General Conference talk for President Nelson. I hope you have a wonderful experience just talking about how our prophet is preparing us for the enemy. We know that he is going to attack, although we don't know exactly where and when. We know he is coming. He's going to repeatedly attack like the enemy did in Mormon chapter 3. And a prophet will always help us prepare for the adversary, and he'll help us prepare for the second coming of the Lord and ultimately final judgment. I hope our students get a sense of that today and they deepen their commitment to Jesus Christ and his restored gospel. Thanks, brothers and sisters.